What an obnoxious title. I mean, both that it's so authoritative, like I'm going to tell you the reason why your life is the way, but this is just like also so callous and flippant about something like economic situations, which is really serious. I can't believe this guy. So we're not going to be able to, this is news from heaven, by the way, and the title of the show is There's a Reason You're Not Rich. This is not a discussion of economics or of policy or of, distribution or that kind of thing. What I'm hoping to do here is we have like a rudimentary, basic level discussion about why, if there is God, who supposedly is sitting there at the levers of reality, the control room, doing things, why doesn't everybody get what they want? Why doesn't everybody get pleasant circumstances? And why does it seem like some people do get these pleasant circumstances who really shouldn't get them? Right? Whereas we, who should, don't, right? Why does all that happen? Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And would you support this program? I know I just spent the whole beginning part of it talking about how lame the program is, but it needs your support. Go to otlemonthly.causevox.com. Become a monthly supporter. We're trying to grow our list of those. That's how we can consistently put this stuff out into the world. That's your vote to say, I want to hear programming that nobody else in the world wants to hear. All right, download Divine Providence. It's a free link in the description. You can follow along. We're starting at number 250, and we're setting the scene here as we always do. Remember, this is about us and it's about the mind, because sure, you can have a question of there's people out here, which we will be getting into, and do they go up in rank and wealth or down in rank and wealth, and where do I rank inside that? But it's also a question about our relationship to all the things that we want. So we have, let's see, I'm just trying, you have an object of desire. I guess that's a red little heart in your mind. You have some things that you picture and feel like those are the things I want right now. Why is, there's a couple of good question starters. Is it definitely an indication that there's no God or that God doesn't care about us if we're not given those things? And what are the matters being weighed? It gets down into the little things we deal with in life as we ponder our situation. And as we always do, we dive in and find something about the nature of all reality as we go in with a particular question. How long have I been prepping this intro? Too long. Get right to it. Okay, number 250. People who worship themselves and the material world instead of divine providence feel justified, and this is right away, we're coming in really heavy and really intense. People who worship themselves in the material world instead of divine providence feel justified when they see irreligious people raised to high rank. Here we go, we're starting with rank already. Getting positions of power in government and the church, amply supplied with wealth, money, living in ostentatious luxury, while people who worship God are living in disgrace and poverty. So right away, we've got some characters here. People who worship themselves and the material world instead of divine providence. Oh, okay, we got a character here. This is sort of a sub-character, divine providence. Sorry, I just bought all these new highlighters. I want to get using them. Feel justified. Okay, so we've got these people who are in this condition, and when they feel like, yep, I'm correct, when they see this stuff happen. And this is like we were talking about. You've got kind of this, situation where there's all these different people in the world. And if you think about rank and wealth, RW, being up here, and then down here, negative rank and wealth, does anybody know what that says? Why does it seem like, I just added a dash which ruins the whole thing. Why does it seem like person 1 gets pulled towards rank and wealth while person 2 doesn't, person 3 does, this one doesn't, this one doesn't? What's pulling that? And isn't there any kind of moral gravity in here? It seems like whether or not you're following love and truth doesn't really affect where you go on this. People who worship themselves and the material world. So we're going to learn a little bit about what he means by that. Think that rank and wealth, look at this, man. Think that rank and wealth are the highest possible joys. The only possible joys joy itself. So in this mindset that we're trying to identify here, people who worship themselves in the material world, what are the qualifications? How do you know if you're worshiping yourself in the material world? Or on the flip side, what's the side effect of doing that? You'd think he'd be coming down and saying, look, the people who worship themselves in the material world, who are love of self and love of the world, they don't believe in God. That's the main thing. But here we're getting it defined by that when we're in that state of mind, it's when we think that rank and wealth, so eminence, rank is sort of an old-fashioned term, eminence and wealth are the highest possible joys. Joy itself. Like they're the same thing. They're synonyms for each other. Look, if I want joy, what gives me joy? It's power and money. And that's the point of life. And so when you get that stuff, that is joy. That matters. Okay, that's the distinction, is when you're in that state of mind, which is a naturally one that most values the love of self and love of the world. You think that's I know I'm repeating myself over and over about this, but to me, reading through this, that's such the key to all this. Okay, so if we think these things are joy themselves and the loss of them is misery itself, that's going to skew how we see the operations of things. So why would we have any cause not to think that's that? If they think at all about God because of their first childhood religion, let's say you're taught growing up, oh yeah, God is doing good things. They call these things, meaning rank and wealth, divine blessings. And as long as they have no higher aspirations than this, meaning they just want to get rank and wealth, they're not into, there's a few things above that, like total dominion over the whole human race and over heaven, which you can get into if you start to let the thing run free. They believe that God exists and worship him. So look at this. You thought people who worship themselves, that's a nice outlook. I'll undo that thing. You can't really do the old green on purple. People who worship themselves, you think that means they build an altar to themselves, they pray to themselves, they do that to the material world. No, you can be in that state of mind and you're going to church and you're saying God is awesome and I worship God. This is obviously a term that can be used for different things. Here we're talking about what do you really value versus here, what are your external actions? So you can even believe in God. I was saying before, well, doesn't it mean you worship yourselves in the material world? That means you don't believe in God. No, these people you can believe in God. You can think in your mind, oh, there's such a thing as a God. And, oh yeah, I'll go and pray to him and say he's really great and ask him for things. That's the beginning point, but look at where it progresses. However, there's something hidden in their worship that they themselves do not know about. So something deep in here. An assumption, this is so cool, an assumption that God will keep raising them to higher honor and greater wealth. Don't you see people who are, God is so good, God gave me this great thing that I have, but God is going to keep doing that. God is going to keep blessing me. That's in there. Like, yes, God is great because God is always going to hook me up. So, of course, I like God. And look at what that leads to. If they do achieve this, and I know, wait. I know this is generalizations. This is not an in-depth description of every individual human being's psychological journey. However, this is a worthwhile principle that we're exploring, and Swedenborg loves to explore principles through essentially straw people, but the simplified versions of it. So don't worry too much about, are we treating everyone as a full 3D human being in this? This is more like we're thinking about states of mind that any of us can be in. And look where this leads. If they do achieve this, their worship tends more and more into superficiality until it drifts away. And eventually, they trivialize and deny God. So if they get what they want, when you've got something to gain, you're on the way up, you say, oh man, God, would you just help bring me to that next level? Thank you so much. You need something. If you get it, if you get to the top of the hill, then you just start to say, well, now I'm powerful. I don't really need God. Oh, there never was God in the first place. So even if you get what you want, when you actually deep down what you're worshiping is the material world and self, rank and wealth. And what it means by worshiping is putting that on the altar in your mind of the belief that that is the most pleasant thing I could experience. That is what it is to worship those things. That those things are the highest good, and and by definition, the things I will pursue at all costs. That means not absent from that altar in the mind are concerns about how you're affecting the rest of the human race, because the greatest good is to get there, and everything else is subservient to it. So when you have that at the core, even if there's this outer covering of, oh yeah, I love God, thank you God for giving me this thing, but actually you see God as sort of a mechanism to get you those things rather than actually putting God on that, which God is love and wisdom. So that would be putting in that little altar space a desire to do good things because they're good and helpful. This, if you end up getting what you want, eventually, okay, God was the rocket booster that got me here, so now I'll discard it now that I'm up in the orbit that I was dreamed of. Okay, so that's if they do get it. But I guess if you don't get what you want and you're in that state, then you continue to worship God, so it's good, right? They do the same if they lose the respect and wealth on which they have set their hearts. So if you don't get it, when you've got this deep down, this worshiping the self in the material world, believing that that's the greatest joy, eventually, no matter what, you're splitting from God, right? Because that's never was the end game in the first place. Or your picture of what God is not what God actually is. You see God as somebody who can get me here. And that's, here is the joy. Rank and wealth is the joy. Okay, so we've just gone into this description of why it's a bad deal to have your heart set on that, because both scenarios, well, I'll read this verse before I make the point. In that case, what are rank and wealth but problems to these evil people? Because you look at those two scenarios, what do they lead to? If they do achieve this, you drift away from God, and you also drift away if you don't get it. So no matter what, you end up drifting away from eternal life. You end up rejecting the very thing that would make you happiest. This, and you know why you did it? Because of rank and wealth. Because of the allure and the pursuit of those. Swedenborg is making the case that if you think about eternity versus temporal or temporary stuff, I never know if it's temporal or temporal. It doesn't really matter because it's just a temporal thing. Eternity is a way bigger deal than the temporary stuff. But if you are setting your heart on the temporary stuff and it comes at the expense of the eternal stuff, which it is right here, what is that gaining of rank and wealth but a problem? Okay, so right away, this changes a little bit. We're saying, why is God so nice to even evil people by giving them rank and wealth, and so mean to the rest of us by not giving us the desires of our heart? Obviously, we lump ourselves in as good people. That's just the human nature. And so we're starting to skew that a little bit here by saying, well, what actually is good? What, is it worth it to gain the world if you lose your soul? They're not problems. Let's shifting gears here, they being rank and wealth. Is it okay if I use those terms? Eminence and power / money are not problems to the good. So good people, it's not a problem. Again, how can you say someone's a good person? Let's qualify. What do you mean by that? Because they do not set their hearts on them. So to get the good label in this case is when you're not setting your heart on rank and wealth, which was the core of the life we just looked through, was setting the heart on rank and wealth. So can you say a little bit more about that? They focus rather on the service or the good that respect and wealth can help them accomplish. You don't need to shun those things. But why do you want those things in the first place? If I'm sitting here, why do I want rank and wealth? And this is a tricky discussion because if you get into like needing your basic needs met, then I think that's probably a different category. Why do I want wealth? Because I can't pay my bills, or because the house is falling apart, or because I may get evicted, or because I'm hungry. I think that's like Maslow's hierarchy. Yes, you've got to get the means there. That's not the same kind of moral question we're looking at here. But this is more like, that would be nice. I want that. And for me, like, I really see much more of this active in rank of like, oh, I'd love to be praised in this situation. I would love to be considered superior in this situation. And then once you get there, like, oh, well, those people are even considered better than me. I'd like to be better than those people. If that's at the core of it, we got a problem. But if you're thinking about, wow, if I had means, financial means, or if I had some kind of position of influence, think of the good things that could be done, then you can very much be pursuing that without it being the same kind of threat to you that we were describing here. Only people who they focus rather on service and good, wealth can help them accomplish. Only people who worship themselves and the material world, then, can reject divine providence on seeing that irreverent people are given high rank and wealth and get positions of power in the state and the church. Okay, we're in a little bit of a pretzel here. How do you even draw a pretzel? Was this a pretzel? Yeah, they have the little things here. They have salt. We're in a little bit of a pretzel because it's like, okay, rank and wealth, we figured out, can actually be detrimental long-term to people who have their heart set on them. So they're not really problems to people who are good because they don't care about whether they get them or not. They use them, they can do it, but they don't have it. It's not what they worship in the same place. So because you when you before you were upset because you saw, look at, I'm right here and I see people that I don't think are very good getting the stuff that is so great. But we're saying, look, it's not, you don't know if it's actually that great. So people who can use this example of people getting the money and wealth that they want, even if they're not good, to reject the idea that there is any kind of God up above it, actually have to be in a state of mind where they don't really get what goodness and truth and true divine blessings are in the first place. So you have to be outside an understanding of what is really good and true and what God really is to say God isn't interfering the right way in human activities. Pretzel. So that's interesting too that he's saying stayed in the church, because the church used to be, it's still to an extent, but it used to be like a church, you might as well have a government position if you're got a high position of power in the church. And so even people who are obviously corrupt could rise up through that, and people again say, look, there's no providence because of that. So this is essentially saying, look, that's one argument we're taking on here for why you can't just say, look, there's obviously no God because people that are not nice and do not seem to have the interest of others at heart have good things happen to them. I don't know if those are really good things. And as far as what those people can do in those positions, we'll be taking a look in the next episode at that. Further, and here we get a little into, what's it all about in the first place? What is higher or lower rank? What is more or less wealth? Incidental. I'll erase it because I know it would drive some of you crazy. Is it really anything but something we imagine? This stuff that we had placed on the pedestal of the mind, this greatest joy, way up here. It's just so funny when I start an episode off with a pretty bad drawing and then refer to it over and over again without improving it. This stuff that was going to be the greatest thing in the mind, right? When we're in our negative state, our ego-based state, we consider, and connect the dots for you, whatever rank matters to you. Is it to be seen as the most moral person? Is it to be seen as the most articulate or learned? It's so funny to say articulate and then not articulate something correctly. Is that what matters? Whatever it is, just look, it's good to see little elements of this in ourselves, because then that allows me to see, oh, this is where I can apply this to myself. To me, it's like a point of happiness when I notice something negative in myself that's being described in Swedenborg, because then I'm like, okay, I know how to plug into the machine. I don't know. For me, it's like, yes, here's a place we can get started. So that stuff that I usually think is so great. Oh, I get jealous. Oh, this person got that stuff that I wanted. What is that stuff even anything? Swedenborg is saying, is it really anything but something we imagine? Is one person more contented or happier than the other? This is the classic, like, oh, look at that rock star or that whoever it is you like. If only I had their life, I'd be so happy. Are they happy? And would you be happier if you had that? Look at a government official. There weren't rock stars in Swedenborg's day, so let's see what he puts in that place. Look at a government official or even a monarch or emperor. After a few years, Does their rank not become simply commonplace? Something that no longer brings joy to the heart? Something that can even seem worthless? Have you ever had something that you really, really wanted? Some things when you want them are great when you get them. Most things I find that you pine for, you get and then they become normal. You think about the feeling of even when you buy something new and at first it like glistens and shines and then it's normal and it happens like surprisingly fast. Are people of high rank any happier on that account than people of low rank, or even than people of no rank at all, like commoners or servants? Yes. These can be even happier when things go well for them and they are content with their lot. Okay, so first he's saying, look, we're so bent out of shape about, do we get this rank and wealth? Even today, even in the moment, forget eternity. Are you sure that's really going to make you as happy as you think? Let alone that stuff can be dangerously leading us astray. But look at this. This is a great description of the love of self, because the love of self wants that high rank and that high wealth. And that's really rank. It really just wants to be the best person. And this can be just in a little scenario when you want to dominate the conversation in a room, or when you want to have your way. You want this thing that you want people to think like you, whatever, all these little subtle shades that we know, we call it the ego or whatever. It's there. Look at this description of it and why it is that God is suggesting to us, you don't want to live that way. You don't want to be that. What troubles the heart more? What is more often wounded? What is more intensely angered than self-love? This happens whenever it is not given the respect to which at heart it raises itself. Whenever things do not turn out the way it wills and wishes. So it's so true. And let's say we do get this upward trajectory that we wanted so much, and we have here rank and wealth to an extent. And we're all the way up here, and we believe ourselves to be of this rank. If somebody, now everybody we meet, they've got to show us the respect or the deference, or let us have control of whatever we think we've earned, or else we're furious, or else we're hurt, or else we're wounded. Suddenly you've made yourself so much more vulnerable. Things that would just be normal if you didn't consider yourself so great, and somebody fails to acknowledge that you wrote a book or whatever, then everything can wound you, and you get actually more. The more power you have, the more fragile you get, if you have your heart set on it. And that's a miserable way to live. Is rank not a matter of substance or service then? What is it but a concept? Can this concept have a place in any kind of thinking except thinking about oneself and the world, and precisely in the thought that the world is everything and that eternity is nothing? The takeaway for me, I know that you could say, look at this, you're not even addressing, I came into this episode to say there's a reason that you're not rich, and you're not even telling me exactly why I'm not rich and powerful. I don't know. But this is what I feel like the takeaway here is. Even though we're getting a little lesson here on how eternity matters more than right now. That eternity is what's gonna last, and that whatever we pursue in the moment, if it has a negative effect on where you're gonna be spiritually in a much more permanent sense, it's not worth it. But even the bigger conversation is this whole pursuit of love of self and love of the world, love of power and esteem, and then love of material gratification. That promises happiness, but doesn't have it in it. And this is the entire spiritual battle. This is the difference between heaven and hell, is everything that is hell is set on power and influence and sensory gratification as the greatest goods. Whereas in heaven, service and usefulness are the greatest goods, and then, reputation and money and those sorts of things are there, but they're subservient to it. You can still have them in your life. This is God trying to say, look, you're asking the wrong question. Why aren't I rich and powerful right now? That's the wrong question that we're asking, right? Because we're starting from a false premise, which is that those things are the greatest things that can happen in life. So to me, man, is that freeing, because all these concerns, all the dark clouds. This is why, one of the reasons why I like the whole Swedenborg thing. Everything that's coming in here and saying, look, you might lose this thing might happen to you. All of this banks on you believing, usually, or so much of it, a really high percentage of it. I don't know exactly what percentage of it would be, but it's high. Banks on the idea that rank and wealth are the greatest good, and that you're going to miss out on those in some way. And that it's not as apparent initially, but as I start to sort through what makes things valuable to me, why do my fears make me afraid, it's because they're saying, look, you could lose this stuff. When you actually believe that the greatest joy comes from service and love and community and understanding and joy at the beauty of what's good and true, that is the greatest tool in the world at freeing yourself, or allowing yourself to be freed from this. So that's why I would bother to pass the whole thing on to you. And that's the news from heaven. Next time, we're going to have an episode where we look at, hey, we said these people who have rank and wealth in their hearts can get raised to these positions. What are they doing up there? Is there a plan even for that? Are they able to help the human race even from there because of the wily divine providence? That's next time. Like and subscribe. Again, monthly support. If you wouldn't mind, go to otlemonthly.causevox.com. It will help us make things like whatever this was. I hope that this idea does something for you. If it does, please leave a comment. Let us know what's it doing for you. How can people apply it to life? And because then we can apply it to life. Great. Okay, thanks for letting me chat this through with you, and I will see you very soon.